Go ahead.
Hey, I'm Alek Mechikoff. I'm a firefighter paramedic here for the city of Sanger. Born and raised in Clovis, and I've been in the fire service for 6 years now, 5 years previously with CAL FIRE. And I was deployed to the Creek Fire about a week and a half ago. The whole task force was up there for about 16 days. I was up there for 9 of those days.
So, had you ever been on a big fire like this before with your past experience with CAL FIRE?
Oh yes. This one in particular, I'm very honored to be a part of this task force because this fire was in our backyard. And I'm not sure exactly, but I do believe it's the biggest fire, not just in Fresno County's history, but the single fire in the history of California. So meaning not a complex, 2 fires burning or 3 fires burning together. The longest time I've been out has been 42 days on the Sobranes fire, and that was in Big Sur, 2017.
There's a house up there.
Right, so initially, I wasn't on the initial dispatch. I came and relieved some guys, so I wasn't there initially. I do know there was a lot of structure protection going on, making sure to protect homes the best they could and mitigate the rate of spread the best they could in the most dangerous time. Our role when we got there was to hold some fire lines that were going down. We focused on Toll House Road and Peterson Road, which went into Blue Creek Canyon, if anyone's familiar with that area. And that's kind of Lower Shaver. That's Lower Shaver. And so we were holding lines, and we were also doing a lot of mop up and making sure that there wasn't any spot fires. That is a fire outside contingency lines. There was some slop overs we had to mitigate as well because the fire activity, because of the bug kill and all the dead trees, the fire activity was intense. So there's a lot of issues we had to mitigate, but we had a really good crew and it was a great experience. Everybody worked really good together. The hardest part. The hardest part for, I love being up there actually. I would say for everybody, I would say the hardest part for me is this is our backyard. Everybody has memories at Shaver Lake. Everybody has memories in Huntington and that area if you snowboard or anything, or at the lake or whatever. There was a lot of questions. I had a lot of family members, friends, people asking me about different structures or different landmarks or whatever that I couldn't answer. And I would say that was the hardest part for me particularly. I don't know about for everybody else, but there was just a lot, and there's some questions I still can't answer that they have. We played the best role we possibly could there at the fire, and we had a role, but it's such a large. It's just such a large operation that we weren't everywhere. There's so many divisions of fire.
So what,
yeah, so when you're deployed, you work 24 hours on, 24 hours off. So you do work a full 24. Because of the trees they're falling and the intense fire activity, we're a lot more cautious at nighttime, making sure that we're really safe, because the head on the swivel analogy kind of goes out the window because you can't see anything. But you are on for 24 hours. And then after that, you'll have a 24-hour off period, and then you just keep going back and forth. So 24 hours on the line, working.
and so what would you like the community of Sanger to know about Sanger Fire's participation in supporting and helping the families there around Shaver and Huntington Lake.
Right.
And
The department's awesome, and the way the department worked with other departments. We had on the task force with Clovis, Kings County, and Selma, and we were all just to be able to work together. And so the department is absolutely awesome. I can't speak for anybody else, but for myself, that I'm extremely honored to be part of something that big and that important. That's probably going to go down in history. So I'm very proud of the entire team that we have here, and being led by the leaders here, and the leadership here is absolutely amazing. So I just want to give credit to all those guys.
Boys, we may just get hot right here. You may not mind.
Hello, my name is Craig Pitts. I am an engineer, acting lieutenant here for the Sanger Fire Department. We were assigned to the Creek Fire. I was assigned as the engine boss for the engine that we sent from Sanger. 3 of us went up initially, and I was not a part of the initial response. I came up 3 days into the incident. Our engine stayed at the Creek Fire for a total of 16 days. 13 of those days I was up there for it. At the Creek Fire, we were assigned, honestly, to multiple tasks. Each day that we worked, we were assigned to something a little different. The initial onset was the onset of the fire, big, huge fire, and just trying to get a hold on what we actually had going on. What our assignments were was a little chaotic at first, from what I've been told or what I've learned. But each day that we went, we were assigned positions that became more manageable, and ultimately ended up in a division of the fire, the Victor Division, which we were up on ridgetop trying to hold the fire at bay, preventing it from coming down into Blue Canyon. Out of the assignments through the day, this became probably the most important or most meaningful to me, knowing the results. That fire got into Blue Canyon. Shaver Lake, the town of Shaver, had been threatened multiple times, and they did an amazing job keeping the fire out of Shaver. And then we were put on that ridge line holding the fire at bay. That fire had gotten down into Blue Canyon. It was going to take a run at Shaver again. Mentioning Shaver multiple times, I've been out on multiple fire assignments, these large campaign fires before, and you know, it's an honor to go on any of them. This one's different, being that me and my family have been up and vacationed up in Shaver. Everybody we know has been up to Shaver, has some type of tie to Shaver. I think pretty much everybody in our task force had addresses of different cabins and residences of requests. Can you go please check on this address or this address? And unfortunately, we couldn't do all that because we're assigned to a specific area, but it made this fire much more meaningful when you know the job that you're doing is protecting something you know in your own. Being up there for that amount of time, 13 days for me, becomes long and hard. The time actually for us goes by pretty quick, but you just go through a couple days and it feels like eons that those couple days were. When you come back home, you come back into reality, and you realize that what you're doing is a good thing. You're up there, you're trying to help and do the best that you can. And you come back into reality and you start feeling the impacts of everybody's so concerned as to what's going on up there with that fire being local. That's like the main difference between this fire and the ones we've done before. Hardest part? I've heard the question before, what was the hardest part for you, or hardest thing you did up there? When you get up there and you're fighting fire and you're doing your job, that's what you're doing, you're doing your job. And there isn't any one specific thing to me, firefighting, that is most difficult. The most difficult thing for me was knowing I'm up there and away from family for such a long period of time. And doing that at this time and what everybody's going through with COVID and the start of school, I know I'm gone for 2 weeks and leaving my wife alone to deal with the kids and the school and the finances and everything that goes on within our home life. I'm absent from that, and being away from that is probably the hardest thing for me to deal with when I'm out there doing it. It was an honor to go up. Had a great crew to work with. I had a great task force to work with, and we went up to do a job. We got the job done and left it over to other agencies to continue on from where we left.
My name is Mark Pisching. I'm a firefighter with Sanger Fire Department, and I responded to the creek fire incident in the Auberry Shaver Lake area. We were dispatched to the call on September 7th, and from here we were dispatched up to meet with the rest of our strike team in the Auberry Elementary School area. So we left from this facility to Auberry School. We waited until we met up with crews from Clovis Fire Department, two from Kings County, and one from Selma. So we responded for the rest of our strike team with those particular units. Myself and two other firefighters were at the incident for 8 days. We were then returned to the station for city coverage, and two more firefighters from this area went up and covered for the continuation to a total of 16 days. While we were up there on the first day, the fire had already been burning for 2 days, and it was starting to move its way down from the upper elevations down into the top of the 4 lanes. It burned through down into the Toll House Road, and we spent a lot of our time the rest of the week in the lower Toll House area off of some like little dirt roads that were the number 2 road, I believe is what they call it, the O2 road, and we were keeping it at bay. I guess the best thing you could say is we were manning a 6,000 foot hose line, trying to keep the fire from cresting up over the ridgeline that we were working on and going down into Blue Canyon, with the idea that if the fire got into Blue Canyon, that it would probably go back up into Shaver, which had already been deemed as a safe and clear area. So we were working to keep the fire from going back up into the Shaver area. The first night that we were up there was pretty intense. We were assigned initially to cover the Pine Ridge Elementary, we were covering Pine Ridge Elementary, us with another engine from Clovis, and there were 3 other engines that were over at the Crespin's rest stop, convenience store, and so we were there manning as the fire front came through. I have a video of the sound of the fire front coming through, and it was, while we were there, when it came, we had nothing that we could do. We ended up getting pushed back to the top of the 4 lanes. We had just enough time basically to turn around and look and see the like 50 to 100 foot flame lanes coming through. And during then is when we found out that much of that fire activity was focused on the Cressman's Rest Stop convenience store area. We were there only a short time before the fire met us at the top of the 4 lanes, which pushed us down to the Buckeye helipad. When it was deemed safer than it was, but it was still very active in the fire activity that was happening at that. They sent us back up into there to do a quick assessment and to try to control as much fire as we could, but there was not much to do when there were still 50, 100-foot flame lengths over our head with active fire blowing at 30, 40 miles an hour across the road. Myself and engineer Lorente were tasked, and we ended up putting out a Connex box, which was full of school supplies at the Pine Ridge Elementary. We quickly reduced that threat, sealed up that box, and that's when our strike team leader told us that it was time to regroup, and we went down to the bottom of the 4 lane to be reassigned. And then from that point on that's when we moved over to the lower toll house area, and we pretty much worked off and on in that region for the rest of the week. And that was pretty much my experience.
Hi, my name is Ryan Lorente, engineer here at Sanger Fire Department. On September 7th, 2020, along with firefighter Pisching and acting engineer Pallas, I was assigned to the creek fire incident at roughly 1,400 hours as the acting crew boss. This was my first experience as a crew boss, so very nervous, very excited about the opportunity. Our first assignment was to meet the rest of our strike team at Auberry School. We got to Auberry School at roughly 1,500. By about 1,700, the rest of our strike team, 2 engines from Kings County, an engine from Clovis Fire, as well as Selma Fire, joined us. We met with our strike team leader, battalion chief from Kings County Fire, Chris Gerking, who would be in charge of us. First thing we did when we got there is we got a briefing from the acting sections chief about what the fire was doing and where we were going to be placed. We ended up being placed at Pine Ridge Elementary School, which is just above Cressman's. At roughly 1900 that night, the fire blew through the area that we were at, forcing us down the hill to a temporary refuge area. We were there for approximately 10 to 15 minutes when we were told that area had been deemed unsafe and we would have to go lower down the 4 lanes, so we ended up at Buckeye Helipad. While we were at Buckeye Helipad, we were in the front row for what was just the worst fire behavior I've ever seen in my 10 years with this department. It was very large, very fast moving, a lot of wind pushing into the mountain communities of Toll House and Auberry. After that fire front had blown through, we were able to go back to Pine Ridge Elementary. There was some areas of the school that were on fire. We were able to go ahead and put those out, saving the school. Unfortunately, the rest of our team that was manning the structure protection at Cressman's General Store, as many of you know, Cressman's was destroyed. Luckily, there was no loss of life or anything like that. We then, for the rest of the evening, were in the lower toll house area doing structure protection. Us being a urban department, more than likely on these large campaign fires will be the ones tasked with the preparation and the defense of people's homes. So for the rest of that night, as well as the other couple of days that I was up there, we were actively fighting fire, protecting houses. I am very proud to say that the school is still standing, as well as all the homes in our immediate area. We're all still standing. All of the kudos go to all of the people that were up there. We were just a very small microcosm of this extremely large incident, and it is not over yet. And I think that's the thing that people have to remember, is that there's still firefighters up there on their 20th, 30th, maybe even 40th day, working tirelessly to protect that community.
My name is Melikian. I'm a firefighter paramedic in the city of St. Fire Department. I was part of a task force that went up and relieved actually 2 other personnel from our department that were sent up on the creek fire on September 7th. We actually arrived there September 14th to relieve them. It was about the 9th day of the fire. At that time, the majority of the fire had slowed down. However, there was quite an incomplete fire line. So, the majority of the heavy fire activity had already ceased. When we arrived, we swapped out our gear with 2 individuals, 2 other firefighters from our department. They had to come back due to some training that we had going on. But when we were up there, primarily our assignments were continue where they basically had left off, which was on the southern end of the fire, Division Whiskey, which was on the lower toll house, Peterson Road area off the Route 2 and the 4. Majority of the time, our assignments were basically to look for slop overs or spot fires, really to manage any hot spots that were in that area. Road conditions were somewhat rough, but manageable. And like I said, the majority of the fire activity had already passed through that area, so the majority of the damage was already done. Our main goal was basically to prevent the fire from rekindling back up, or depending on the fire activity in that, or correction, the weather activity in that area, if it could potentially kick up any more fire and start another run. We were on that task force for approximately 8 days, 8 to 9 more days, where our task force timed out. At that time, our task force was actually allowed to renew their contract, so they ended up staying on for 7 more days. However, due to our lack of staffing with Sanger, we needed to bring our crew back to provide coverage for the citizens of Sanger here in Sanger. The rest of our task force stayed up there for 7 more days, in which they came back after those 7 days. And again, there's still hundreds of firefighters up at the creek fire, still continuing to work hard and really tie in this fire and really put it out to its entirety. So hats off to those firefighters that have been out there for those 30, 40 days. Like my engineer Lorente had stated, we were there for a very minute time. Glad that we could take part and be there to protect our backyard, because Shaver Lake area is our backyard and our backyard community for Sanger, and it's important that we go there and show support